Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone, if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Julia on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from Massachusetts, where, yeah, it's probably a little bit better than it is right here. We're not even going to get into that weather stuff because it's already depressing enough as it is. But yeah, she's on here to share her health and fitness journey with us and discuss all things health and fitness. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Julia, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, before we just get into anything else, I always got to get things started by saying, Julia, why don't you just get us started with your health and fitness journey and how you eventually led into you becoming a bodybuilder?
Sure. So I've always been an athlete. I mean, ever since I can remember, even from my parents instilling just outdoor activities into our weekends. Every single weekend, we were either at Acadia National Park, walking around Boston, going to Niagara Falls, hiking, biking, kayaking, you name it. My father was a boxer. He was a hockey player. He was a soccer coach, a soccer player. My mother played volleyball. And they both played tennis. I mean, you name it, we played it. My sister as well was an athlete. So I've always been a natural athlete. I started weightlifting in, gosh, I think it was, and I don't even want to say it was college because I was a cardio bunny and I lifted like 5 pound dumbbells. So I don't even know if I can even say like I was a weightlifter at that point. But what I really when I really found weightlifting was CrossFit in 2010. And I just, being a cardio bunny for so many years, I had just thought that that was like the physique that I wanted to achieve, you know, just being skinny and a size 2 or 4, whatever it may be, or a specific weight. And then I saw my first CrossFit class. I drove up and I saw these women in, sports bras and shorts, the typical CrossFit attire, just flipping tires, looking so strong, looking so badass. And I think I put my car in reverse because I was like, I can't do this. Like, this is not for me. Because you see like the top of the line athletes, it was intimidating, but it was also so inspiring and remarkable. And I think the owner had like flagged me down because he knew I was coming in for like, a first time visit. And he was like, come on in. I'm like, damn. So got hooked. I started CrossFit thinking I wanted to be, A, B, or C size. And it quickly developed to how large can I get my back squat? How, much can I bench? How quick can I do, Diane WOD? And from there, it was like 4 years of competitive CrossFit. I was doing that at CrossFit New England, primarily in Natick, Massachusetts. It's pretty well-known CrossFit. And then I needed something more. I needed like a more mentally disciplined, challenging goal. I'm just such a goal-oriented person. I always have to have a date in mind, an accomplishment in mind. Like it could be like 2 years ahead of time, but I need to have it like on paper, see it every day, work towards it, etc. Just my personality. And I was like, CrossFit is grueling. Not that bodybuilding isn't grueling on the body, but I just needed something a little more mentally challenging that would challenge my discipline with food, with, everyday balance, and also incorporate weightlifting. I've always been a competitive person, just as a natural athlete growing up. Even my husband and I, we actually compete at like Target to see who can like self checkout faster. So like we are both very competitive. I've always been very competitive. So I just needed something. I was out of college by then. I was not doing CrossFit anymore, just kind of giving my body a break. I had found bodybuilding in 2014. I did not compete, but I did prep for a bikini competition, which I'm in the wellness division. So it's very drastic as far as muscle density and conditioning. So wellness obviously wasn't even a thought. I didn't even know about wellness. I just was very attracted to the bikini division and that look. I thought that that was more suitable for me at the time. What I didn't realize is that I was a little too muscular, unfortunately, given my history of playing college sports, high school sports, just always being active, always biking, and hiking. So the coach that I hired at the time was like, you're going to have to do a lot of cardio, no more leg days, no more back squats. We're just going to have to kind of diminish that muscle that you have. So I gave it a try, just thinking, okay, this is what it is. Like, I want to do this. I had it in my head. I had a date in mind. And slowly I was realizing that it was miserable. Like, just, there's hard days in prep, there's great days in prep. There's really difficult days, but it seemed for that bikini prep, I was just miserable. I loved leg days. I didn't love cardio because, I mean, who does really? But it was a lot. It was a lot of things that were kind of just taken from me that I was really passionate about as far as weightlifting. So unfortunately, I pulled out. It was like 4 weeks out. I was so close, but I was like, I can't. I'm not mentally ready for this. And I think, the food, the training, all of it goes into play. But I think if you're not mentally ready, it's not for you. There's that simple saying that says the stage will always be there, and it will, and it was. So fast forward to, and in the meantime, I kind of just did my own thing. I met my husband along the way. He was a bodybuilder. He had competed before. He's very active. He was a personal trainer. He's really keen on nutrition. So we just kind of did our own thing, just enjoyed the gym. I remember going back into the gym kind of with no real direction because I didn't have like a goal in mind, like a stage date or, anything like that, or a competition coming up. So I just kind of went into the gym and did what I love. And it always seemed to be back squats or deadlifts or leg exercises. And it was always legs. And then in 2020, I had seen that the wellness division was coming to America. And I was like, yes, like I saw it a couple years before in some Eastern European contests, some South American contests. And I was like, what is this division? Like, these girls are just, they look to me like athletes. Like, these were the girls that I resonated with as far as physiques, and what my closest off-season physique looks like is kind of that. So I said, you know what, let's give this a try. And I realized I was planning my wedding as well. So I was like, I can't do a show, like, and plan my wedding and all of that. It's just too much. So I had started pretty much in 2020, really just getting in tune with the discipline that requires, for nutrition, the meals, really cleaning up my diet, really understanding what it means, by not all macros are created equal, really just cleaning up everything to intuitively training for wellness, really just preparing my body to start prep one day, whatever that meant. And it was about 2 years of kind of just doing my own thing with intentional purposes of competing in wellness. And I said, I need a coach. So in 2022, I decided to, research, because I research everything so much. I researched, my coach. I found her, Brenda Garcia. She's absolutely amazing. She knows wellness in and out. From the first conversation that we had, it was on July 4th. I always remember that date. I said to her, I want to step on stage with a nationals level physique. I don't care how long that takes. Here's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. Mold me into a nationals level physique. I do not care how long it takes or whatever we have to do, obviously with health in mind. And we did. And the rest is kind of history. I stepped on stage on April 15th for my first show. We did really, really well. And then in 3 weeks after that, I stepped on stage for my second show to obtain my nationals qualification in Rhode Island. And we did really well too. And so, yeah, and I'm just in love with it. I'm in love with the journey, the process, the prep, the hard. I love the hard twice, because it really just molds you into the disciplined athlete that you become, or the champion mentality that you need to have in this sport, in my opinion.
Well, first off, I tried CrossFit twice myself, but I'm 6'3", so
Oof.
those
You hated snatches. You
well, and those
hated them.
kipping pull-ups too. Good God, try not to just
Oh,
hit your neck and oh. So that, again, I respect all the CrossFit athletes too, but it's like they're
too.
not for the tall of heart and the tall people, in general, anyways. But like you mentioned
It's hard.
before, this is so much more of a mental sport than it is a physical sport, and most people just notice the physical changes and just be like, "Oh my God, Julia, you look amazing," but they won't really understand those mental changes that have happened as well. What has this journey been like for you mentally?
Honestly, before I started, I did have that in mind that, I tried this before and I failed, and in my mind, I failed. I didn't realize how much that actually shaped me to understand what's coming. And also, I didn't know what to really compare it to because wellness and bikini prep is just two totally different preps. Everybody's prep is different completely, but in those two divisions, they're completely different. Um, and I had thought a couple times, like, what if I just quit again? Like, I'm not a quitter. Like, what if? What if I can't do this? And I honestly shifted my mindset to just take it one day at a time. Check the boxes, drink your water, drink your meals for that day, do your training, do your cardio, and that's it. Don't worry about tomorrow, just today. And that's the mindset that I had. And it really did shape all the other days that were piled on for that mindset. I kept checking the boxes every day. They just piled on those days. And eventually it was show day. And I said, I did it and I didn't quit. And I think that mentally was the best trophy, was to just know. And I had that in the back of my head, like, gosh, if I quit again, it's going to be like, oh, I told you so, like you're such a, failure. That's just me mentally, saying that to myself. But to overcome that and realize I could do it and I'll do it twice. So that was the best trophy.
How hard was it to not do those exercises that you said you were so comfortable with and doing? Because I struggled with that first off when I really started to get into the shape of things, just realizing that, hey, I need to lay off some body parts that I originally just loved training.
Yeah, so hard. So hard. I mean, I love training legs. I've always loved training legs. Soccer player, tennis player, field hockey, like just it's all legs. And I naturally have more like bigger legs, more muscular legs. Even as a kid, it was kind of funny looking at, pictures of me and my friends like 5, 6 years old, and I've got like little beefy legs. So it's really hard in that sense. But at the end of the day, I mean, there was workouts that I didn't love. Like I hate training back, and I know I'm like the minority. Like I just don't like it, and I try to push like forced love on back days, but it's hard. But at the end of the day, you do what you have to do. You check the boxes and you just move forward.
Well, and so many people don't understand how huge of a role nutrition plays. And I mean, it's talked about a little bit, but it's not talked about, I don't think, as much as it should be. What were some of the bigger nutritional changes that you've made?
Um, Gosh, everything. I mean, like I said,
No Reese's peanut butter cups, unfortunately.
no, no. I mean, it was a lot. For the last 2 years I really did clean up my diet, and I was very intentional of training and everything to have that goal of competing in wellness. So essentially my diet was clean, but timing of foods, the amount of foods to push, the little amounts of foods that you have to, the hunger pains in the middle of the day or at the end of the night, because you're that deep into prep. Um, those those were kind of like a rude awakening, if but at the end of the day, that it's working. So, you just kind of keep plugging away, and just tomorrow I'll worry about tomorrow's meals.
And I'm going to be completely honest. There's going to be days when you're just going to feel like crap, when you're not going to want to do it. I don't
Yeah.
care what anyone says. There's some people that say, oh, I never have those days. And I just nod my head and say, oh, yeah, sure. But then deep down, I'm like, okay, yeah, they're obviously lying. But how do you deal with those days? And where do you think that strength comes from?
Yeah, those days definitely exist. Anybody that tells you they don't, they're lying. So yeah, so the way that I just overcame those days, well, I live with a personal trainer, and and I'm married to one, and he really pushed me. He always said at the end of the day, what's your competition doing right now? What are they doing right now? They're not crying about it. They're not, procrastinating cardio. They're not, half-assing reps. They're doing it, and they're gonna, in whatever you leave on the table, they're gonna snatch up. So that was always my mentality going forward, into this prep, and it always kind of has been. I'm always thinking about who else is out there, because there's always somebody better. There's always somebody more conditioned, more muscular, bigger, whatever it may be. But no one's going to outwork me, and that's something that, no one can take away from you, is the amount of work that you put in. And, you put your body through so much. Why not give it 100% every single day? You're paying a coach, you're doing, you're buying protein, you're buying so much food, you're training. Why not give it your 100%? Make it count.
What is one positive thing about living with a personal trainer, and what's one negative thing about living with a personal trainer?
Yeah, he keeps me accountable and he keeps me accountable. It's a twofold. No, he's my support system. I mean, obviously, like a spouse is a support system, and it helps when they understand it, and then it also helps that he's competed before. He understands, like, it does get hard. There's no perfect day every single day. So he does remind me of that, which is such a bonus. I always say, to my coach, that it's like living with her. Because he knows my plans, he knows my foods, he knows every single measurement of my foods at this point. So, he's always there to help, but he's also there to keep me accountable. There's obviously times, we just recently got married about 2 years ago, so we're still technically, newlyweds. So we like to go out to eat. We're foodies. So, seeing him be able to have that flexibility is definitely tough. But I don't know if there is a con, as cheesy as that's going to sound. I don't think there is a con to living with somebody like that. It's just, he's making me better and
Well,
he's keeping me accountable.
speaking of food, if there was one food that you could change to make it healthy and that you could eat it on prep, what would it be?
Reese's. Of course, Reese's. I would say burger and fries, because that's my go-to. Every time I cheat, I'm such a boring beige vanilla kind of gal. I just love my burger and fries. But I mean, technically that was my refeed, so you could say it's a little healthy if you skew it the right way. But I think Reese's for sure.
You're talking to a guy who literally just has vanilla on vanilla cake, basically, and then I just put ketchup on my hamburgers too, so you cannot have a more plain Jane person than me. So I
Yeah.
understand that, 1,000,000%. But one of the things that isn't talked about as much as it should be when it comes to just how hard this sport is the posing aspect of it. Most people do not understand how hard posing is for most of these athletes. What is your relationship like with posing?
So I have a posing coach. She actually just competed a couple weeks back. She's a pro in wellness as well, and she gets it. She understands wellness in and out. She understands what the judges are looking for. She's been in the game for a couple years now, and she's actually out of Texas, so we do everything remote. But posing and specifically posing endurance, is so underestimated, I feel. You want to go to a show. Of course, everybody wants like an easy show, right, to win. But I want a show that they're going to make us work for it. In my head, it'll be more rewarding. And when they make you work for it, the the diminisher is the posing endurance. I mean, they can like wipe out girls left and right, that aren't practicing that. So actually, a part of my posing homework is to put a first call out, like a professional first call out. I choose the New York Pro because it was a lot of turning and a lot, just to practice posing endurance. And I put that on YouTube and just pretend I'm one of the girls. Sunny, Yarishna, Angela, it doesn't even matter. I just pick that girl and I just do my routine. And it's 10 minutes of it's grueling. Posing is hard. It's really, really hard. And then, posing also reminds you the lack of mobility that you don't do, specifically me. So, I've incorporated a lot more of yoga, massages, scraping, cupping, yoga wheel. It all plays a big part into that 10 seconds that you're on stage, just showcasing what you've worked for and doing it well.
I mean, the amount of work that you have to put in your body, not just the physical exertion, is incredible, and was eye opening for me too. Like you talked about the massages, the cupping, the scraping, but when you're walking on that stage, what is that moment like for you, knowing that you've worked so hard for months upon months?
So I love the stage. I danced as a little girl. I was in drama club. I danced in college. Like, I love the stage. I really do. Funny enough, in my 9 to 5 role, I work in healthcare, and we did a rebranding launch a few years ago, and they asked me to be a key speaker. And I had got on the stage and I was wearing heels and I was shaking. And I don't know if it was because I was speaking versus like dancing or acting or putting on a performance, but I was so nervous. And so I've never been on stage for a bodybuilding competition. You're in dental floss, practically like bedazzled dental floss, showcasing, what you've worked hard for, but also ultimately receiving feedback, negative feedback. You want to know what you need to improve, right? Judge me on all your flaws. I'm like, how am I going to do this? Like, am I going to shake? Am I going to be nervous? Am I going to sweat? Am I going to choke? Um, as soon as they called my name, it felt like I was back on the stage, just a happy little 7-year-old just performing. I was so happy. I had zero stress. It was just euphoria. And, someone once told me that the person that you are on that first time that you hit the stage, the person that you are before that and then after that is totally different. You've just molded yourself into, and you'll know that feeling. And I couldn't describe it anymore, like better. It was just, and I know that's so vague, but everybody that competes will tell you the same. You walk off stage a different person. And immediately I wanted to get back on stage. I was like, I want to do it again. I want to do it again because it's fun. And the nerves kind of dwindle when you're just showcasing all the hard work. When you've checked the boxes and you've given your 100%. I think if I cheated, if I didn't do cardio, if I was kind of like half-assing reps or training, I'd probably be nervous, but I wasn't. I was just like, here it is. And I had that mindset before, and I forget who told me this, but they said, even if it's a lie, tell yourself that everyone's there to see you. You are the star of the show. And I said that to myself. And I know it's a lie. Like, not everyone's there to see me. It was probably like 5 people that came to see me. But I said, everybody is here to see you. And that is kind of what I visualized right before. And I just had fun with it. So much fun.
Well, and I've noticed throughout the podcast that you have a wrist guard on, and knowing that, with exercises, 75 to 80% of all the exercises you're ever going to do involve using the wrist.
Yeah.
Has that always been a problem? And how do you sort of incorporate, I don't know, ways to mitigate the wrist pain when you're working out? Because like I said, unfortunately, the vast majority of the moves that you will ever do working out involve using the wrist.
Yeah, so this is pretty recent. I mean, I say it's recent, but I think it's just flared up a little dramatically. I'm okay, I swear. But it's carpal tunnel. I'm 39 years old. I've worked in healthcare since I was, 21, texting, calling, typing, all of that. It's kind of, yeah, and I talk with my hands a lot. So, yeah, it's all kind of caught up to me. So I'm just kind of icing it and just doing what I need to do, doing certain exercises. It doesn't hurt so much during workouts unless it's something that's like a little like smaller, like pulling or like, it's just, but I'm like wrapped around the barbell so it doesn't hurt. Yeah, there's really no pain as far as working out, maybe like a tiny amount when I'm doing like a certain lat pull down that's kind of close gripped. But I'll switch that up. I can always be flexible with that. But
Well, like how I told her, so this is my little secret too, like how I can only really release 3 of these a week because that's the max. And one of the reasons why it's the max is because I will get carpal tunnel stuff in my wrist just from all the clicking and all the stuff that goes into editing this stuff. I figured that out the hard way. So it's always just, so the moment I saw your wrist guard, I was like, okay, thank God. At least someone who
it's
might
carpal tunnel.
understand. It has to, and then like, yeah, literally I have to take, even doing like rough edits for these things, I have to sometimes take just like 15-minute breaks where I just have to just be wiggling I just have to just be stretching it out or doing something with it because yeah, it is brutal. So yeah, and that's great that it's not as bad as this because my mom also has one of those too, but she just wears it at night. But it's really tough. But I mean, we got to talk about post show now. What is your favorite post show meal?
Post show meal, I had a burger. It was boring. I did
There's
my
nothing.
first.
First of all, there's nothing boring about a hamburger. Don't ever be embarrassed
No,
about hamburger. Is one of the
no,
greatest foods that's ever been invented. So anytime anyone ever says that they're embarrassed about that, it's like no,
agreed.
that's not. Yeah.
Agreed. My husband, he's so like diverse. He'll like order like prime rib, this, that, and I'm like burger, burger,
Well,
burger
the
every
problem with
time.
those people, I always tell them that claim that they're so diverse in the first, like you just haven't had the right hamburger. That's your problem.
Right. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. My first show, we went out for We went out for a burger. It had like an egg. It was a bison burger. So I was like craving bison for whatever reason, and I had an egg, cheese, all that. And then the second show that I did in Rhode Island, we drove. It was like 10:30 at night or something crazy, and we drove to Five Guys. I was like, that's all I want is Five Guys. I love my Five Guys.
I love it so much, but I only limit myself to it once a month because, and I need to find the shortest route home. I need to make sure that it's only the one that's like 15 minutes away because that stuff just goes right through me, but it is great. I enjoy it.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
hardest, the closest I've ever felt to actually having a heart attack. Now I'm only 29 years old, and this was like probably like 2 or 3 years ago. I decided to have two double hamburgers at Five Guys. Never doing that again. That was
Yeah.
after I was taking in that last bite, I was like, oh God. It's like it might finally be coming, everyone. 27, and I was like, hey, at least if I did the opposite, it'd be like, yeah, he died doing what he loved, eating his Five Guys hamburgers. So
Yeah. What a way to go out.
what a way,
What a way.
what a way to go out. I mean, yeah, I couldn't agree with it, better myself. But we got to talk about post-show blues because it's one thing that's not mentioned really as much as it should be. You're not going to be able to look that stage look 24/7, unfortunately. And so many people just that aren't familiar with the sport, they don't get that. I've always said one of the most insulting things you can ever say to a bodybuilder is you can ask them if they're still competing when they're in their off season because they just don't. The general public just might look at their off season and be like, "Oh, they just must have given up." But how do you deal with post-show blues? And has it gotten easier for you as your career's gone on and as you've done more and more shows to sort of accept the fact that, like, hey, I am going to have to put on weight?
Yeah, so this was my first improvement season. I mean, my first show was in April. My second one was in the beginning of May. And obviously, after the first show, I didn't have any post-show blues because I was ready for a second one. But I definitely had some. I mean, there's there's girls that go through it way worse, unfortunately. For different reasons. I knew I needed to gain weight. I stepped on stage at my last show at 131. I'm 5'2". I currently weigh like 158. So I understood that I needed to get heavier. And I loved my physique beforehand, like my starting physique. I loved it. I'm naturally more comfortable, curvier, and a little softer. So I was like, this is going to be a cakewalk. Like, I love being thick. Like, it's fine. Like, I'm going to, no. Once you see how lean you can get, and I was very, very conditioned, and then you go back to that, you're like, at least for me personally, I thought, oh my gosh, did I lose all of my gains, quote unquote? Did I lose everything I worked so hard for 20 weeks? Am I, spilling, as we say? Am I just, kind of blowing up? And I think my coach really, really helped with that, keeping me accountable, keeping me checked in. She knew, she knows my personality. So she knows, like, if I get a little quiet, like, she's like, what's up? What's going on? She talked me through it. I definitely didn't have it, like I said, as bad as it could have been. But there is, I'm a goal oriented, date oriented kind of person. So when I don't have a date in mind or a goal in mind, I'm just like, oh, what do I do? Like, I have no direction. I need direction. And my direction now is just to build and improve and get better. So I don't look the same that I did the first show. So I look even better. So now, technically, I don't have a date or, an actual, I do have a goal, but it's definitely hard. I think, you just keep plugging away, understand that, what you're doing is right, and just keep checking in with your coach. I know a lot of girls kind of just fade away and disappear, and they're like, I don't want to, I'm embarrassed, I have shame or whatever it may be. But just that's the best thing that I could advise people to do is just keep accountable. You don't even have to look at your check-in photos, just send them and delete them. Like, you don't, that's not where we're at right now. We're not trying to be stage lane, just trying to get better.
Well, and on the opposite side too, I mean, like you mentioned, it's all about getting bigger and putting on size. Buy dysmorphia. Once you sign up for this sport, you are never going to be good enough. You're never going to be big enough, no matter how hard you train and no matter how hard you work. I mean, I've talked to Miss Olympia winners and they still to this day, are just like, there's always stuff I can improve on. How do you deal with that fact too? Because you're also dealing with the post-show blues where, you're like, some people are just like, yeah, I just don't really want to put on all that weight. But then on the other end, they're just like, no matter what I do, I'm never going to be good enough.
Yeah. I mean, I think, that's individualized for sure. I like to really try to understand that bodybuilding is building a body essentially, right? So you're building that in the off season, and they always say that cliche quote, like champions are built in the off season, and it's true. I mean, you're building what you needed to work on. I think as bodybuilders, we're happy, but we're never satisfied because that's just the name of the game. That's the sport we're in. We get on stage to get critiqued, tell us our flaws so we can work on them.
Which
And
I've
then
always
prep
found fascinating, by the way, that the people that judge themselves more than any person on the planet really then go on and get judged by others. That's always been a thing for me. I was like,
yeah.
that's just a conundrum right there.
I know. I always say that. I said, "You think you can hurt my feelings? I pay thousands of dollars to have strangers pick me apart. Like it's not, it's fine. It'll be okay." But yeah. So to answer your question, I feel like you just have to, just trust, trust the process. That cliche quote, trust the process. And know that whatever you reveal is going to just be that much better. If you just keep your head down and just keep working and stop getting in your head. I feel like prep goggles are real in the off season as much as they are during prep. So you just have to kind of remember to take them off sometimes and realize what you're really working towards, that end goal, even if it's so far on the horizon you can't even see it yet.
Well, and let's be completely honest. You're not the average looking woman. If you were to walk out in public, dressed the way you are right now, you're going to draw people's attention. I compare it to like being a mini celebrity where it's human nature when you see something that's not the normal to just be like, oh, wow, that's fascinating. What has that been like for you? Just realizing the fact that you're going to draw a lot of people's attention. And I mean, it's got to be weird at times, especially as you get leaner for a show. But how do you deal with that? And just what is that whole experience like?
So it was funny because I did my entire prep at a Planet Fitness.
Oh,
So
God.
and luck, yeah. So luckily, great Planet Fitness. Loved it. I did everything I needed to do at that. It was like a one-stop
How
shop,
did
and
they
it was
not kick you
nice.
out?
I know they almost did. They almost did for my backpack, for my jug of water, for and you name it. So I had a lot of girls specifically come up to me like, "Hey, what's your secret?" I'm like, "I'm eating tilapia and rice. Like, it's not a secret. It's terrible. I don't recommend it. Like for you anyway. Like they're just lifestyle girls, and they just wanted to know like how I dropped weight because obviously I was dropping weight at that point. But I was like, yeah, I'm in prep. Like you don't want to do like you can do this, but I don't recommend it right now. Like it was a lot, it's a lot. So walking to the grocery store after like a gym session, like in shorts, obviously shredded at that point because luckily for me, I had prepped during the winter. Luckily, I don't know if I'm lucky. It was cold. But I was covered up for the majority of the time because it was just freezing in New England. And, closer to the show date, I felt like I don't know, like a circus freak, I guess. The stairs, you can feel them. And I understand like people are they don't see this all the time. I had veins where I never even saw them. So I get it. But it was funny because my husband and I, we just recently went to Maine for the weekend. And we were walking on, a pretty popular walk where there's a lot of people. And I had shorts on, and he had said, I never realized how big your legs are compared to like an average woman that is not bodybuilding. Like you look like a monster. I think he said linebacker, which is, I don't know if I should take that as a compliment or not, but it is what it is. And he's like, I didn't realize until you are next to an average woman like how beastly you look. So I'm like, cool, thanks. Awesome.
Oh, bodybuilding, that's the best compliment you can ever receive. Now, again,
It
if you were
is.
just if you were
It
just an
is.
average person, someone called you beastly and you look like a linebacker, it's like, okay, what's going on? What's going on here? But
Right.
no, that's no. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
awesome. And it really is just
Yeah.
all about the, perception too, and just a lot of
For
times
sure.
people just want to just come up and just say like, "Hey, it's inspiring," because it is inspiring, and especially, all the stuff that happens behind the scenes like I talked to you about before that most people just don't understand. But when it also comes to this lifestyle too, I mean, it's very time consuming. It's a selfish sport if we're being completely honest. And I don't mean it. Whenever I say selfish, like I don't always want to come off as just saying it like in a bad way. It's selfish in a good way where it's like you're bettering yourself, you're doing that stuff, but like it is selfish. How do you deal with just the loss of a social life and the loss of a lot of other things that you have to do in order to be successful in this sport?
Yeah. So, I mean, with COVID and kind of like a forced isolation situation, I had really tried to make it a point with my prep to be as social as possible without, because everybody's at every single holiday, I have a Polish family and an Italian family. So it's food. It's all food. It's, every holiday, Sunday dinners. And I know my family who, don't necessarily understand bodybuilding as a whole, like I do, like my husband does, are like, oh, we feel bad. I'm like, don't feel bad. I'm a consenting adult. Like, I've chosen this. Like, I don't want anybody to ever feel bad. If I'm eating tilapia and they're eating stromboli or, whatever it is. So I tried to be as social as possible and still be present with family holidays, knowing I was prepping during every single holiday, Thanksgiving through Easter, and everything in between. So I did try to do that. I tried to attend like friend get-togethers. Obviously, with springtime coming along, it was cookouts. I tried to just bring my own food. I adapted to it. Unfortunately, you can still be social without it revolving around food, although it's so hard. But I did it. And people just understood. In between shows, however, that was tough. There was a couple of pizza parties and like football games that I had to, or whatever it was, basketball games. My husband went to. I was like, just go, just save yourself, just go have fun. And it was just, I was exhausted and I just couldn't be around pizza at that moment. It was tough, but it was only for like a couple of weeks where I had to just kind of say no to things.
Well, I have two healthcare questions for you. The first one is, how do you deal with being on prep brain and working such an important job?
It's exhausting. It's really exhausting. Luckily, prep brain wasn't too bad for me. I dropped a lot of things. Like I just dropped keys all the time. I dropped Tupperware containers all the time. I just dropped everything. I dropped a jug of protein. So yeah, the brain is a little foggy at times, but luckily it didn't affect my work because at the end of the day, like I'm not, this isn't my job and it pays, my job pays for this. So I had to be on point and I understood that. But yeah, dropping things was horrendous.
And how
It's
important
so
is, or
frustrating.
how much motivation do you take from your job when it comes to your own journey? Because I bet you deal with people that might have been dealt a rough hand in life and people that might be struggling. Do you use that at all in motivation? Like maybe on days when you're not feeling it, or just days where you're just like, I'm grateful that I'm able to have this body and be able to do this?
Yes, so much yes. We were mini golfing with a couple of our friends a couple weeks ago, and my husband had said, you should hear the conversations that she has with her patients. I mean, they're tough. They're tough to hear, in passing when he's home. And I work from home, so I'm constantly doing case conferences with my patients, etc. And he says it's tough. I don't know if I could do it. I would never be able to do it. So I do. I'm very grateful to just be able to get out of bed without assistance, without an assistive device, without a caregiver. I'm happy to have my health. I'm happy to have supports around me, and it really does my job, my 9 to 5 really reminds me of that. Like I don't have to do this. I don't have to bodybuild. I get to.
How do you deal with just letting out, just dealing with all the stress of that job too? Because like I have a friend who works for a suicide hotline, and I don't understand how you're able to, like, as great of a job as it is, and how much impact they're doing, just the mental toll that could take on you. And being that, like your husband said, you have some rough conversations. How do you sort of try to get that out of your mind and not let it ruminate there? Because I would be one of those people where I think that would impact me a lot, where I might not be able to do a lot of other things just because I would let it ruminate, just because that's the type of personality that I have.
Yeah, it's really hard. I think with experience, I don't want to say let that go because there's definitely some situations where I don't let it affect me anymore, because that's emptying your glass and not being able to fill somebody else's. But I have practiced that over time. I've been in this industry for, geez, it's got to be almost 20 years now. A little bit less, but it's approaching 20 years. And, in the beginning, it's hard to let go. And in certain situations, it's very hard to let go. But, there's only so much that you can do as a human being. And sometimes it's just listening to somebody and kind of absorbing that and then, kind of giving your feedback. But at the end of the day, like I said, you can't empty your glass psychologically, and just drain yourself because then you're just useless to others to help.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's one thing that my friend was telling me too. That is just like you can't let it impact everything of your life, because then you can't help out others too. And you got to just realize
Mhm.
that too. Like, yeah, you can't do everything for a person. You got to just realize that you can just help them as much as you possibly can. But when it comes to coaches, and speaking of helping, when it comes to coaches, what in your opinion makes a coach a good coach? Because there's so many coaches out there, and I'm gonna be completely honest, from what I've heard from so many guests, there's more bad coaches than there are good coaches, just because, especially in the day and age of Instagram, where everyone thinks that they're a coach if they just did one show and then they're like, oh my God, I'm the greatest advice ever. But in your own personal case, what makes a coach a good coach? Because it does vary from person to person.
Yeah, I don't think that there's one answer. I think that there's, many factors about that. I think, they have to be empathetic, but they also have to drive you. I think that just knowing how your personality is. I mean, my coach knows my personality at this point. Even in a text, like she can feel it. And I think that being in tune with your athletes is key. I mean, whether it's lifestyle or competition prep, you really have to just understand that not every person's lifestyle or balance is the same. So not that you have to adjust everything and be like, okay, well, yeah, you can do a show, but we're not going to do cardio because you can't. I'm not saying that, but just adjusting to their lifestyle. If they're putting kids on the bus, or even if they're just dealing with first day of school, emotions, behind sending your kids off to school, et cetera. Like just understanding that and how it impacts them, even though, like I don't have children, but a few of my clients do. So, I'm like, tell me a little bit more about that. And also I think, just being a coach open to education, just furthering that education, because things change all the time and people's needs change all the time, and the fitness world, technology changes all the time. So kind of adapting to that and continuing education, I think, is a super super important factor as well.
You really need to have an intuition. I mean, that's probably the biggest one too. You need to be able to read people and know when to say the right
Yes.
thing and when to. I mean, it's a skill that really is such an undervalued skill, but it's really probably one of the most important things as well. But like you said, with technology, we live in the age of Instagram, where it has helped, I think,
Mhm.
grow the sport a lot more than if it wouldn't have been around. But on the negative side, I talk to a lot of people who really struggle with, especially their first time around, the fact that you can access anyone. And if you know, let's say, who you're competing against, you might be able to check in on them and compare yourself. And let's be honest, this entire sport is built on comparing yourself with others. Did you ever struggle with that at all? Maybe just checking in with other people that you might have known that you're competing against, or how did you deal with that sort of the fact that you could at least?
Yeah, so I definitely knew who was competing because it's Northeast is such a small, like little world. Excuse me. Choked.
No problem.
So Northeast bodybuilding is such a small little world. So you definitely know, and then people, the algorithm pops up all the time, so you see that as well. Luckily, I made friends with and really good connections with the girls I was competing against. I mean, we're all there for the same reason. We've all worked so hard. We all want to win. And they're all class acts. I mean, they're classy females and they're strong, and I look up to them and I was almost inspired by them. But at the end of the day, I think if you're using it as a positive, I think it's a great thing. Establishing connections, networking, introducing yourself to girls backstage that have similar, like-minded individuals with similar goals to you. It's you can really develop some key friendships in your life, meet some really wonderful people in this industry. But I also think that you can raise your cortisol levels to an unnecessary amount if you're stalking people you're going up against. There's nothing you can really do. I always say I had this conversation actually with one of my friends who's competing in nationals this weekend. And, it's like, worry about that in your off season. Like I always think Rayanne Fogel's going to come to my show. She's going to be who I'm going up against. She never is because I'm not a pro, and I'm never, hopefully one day I'll be able to go up against her, but it's not my next show and it wasn't my last two shows. But I always have that mentality, like Rand's going to show up. So I have to do the work. I have to not leave anything on the table, nothing in the tank, and eat all of my meals. And I will show up as a undeniable physique if I continue that mindset. So and especially going into my next show, which will be nationals of next year, I'm not going to look at who's showing up. Everybody's going to look at it's nationals. There's no reason to just stalk anybody or creep on anybody or anything like that. it's just prepare for the best of the best, and you will bring your best.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never heard someone talk about how they imagine like they're facing someone who's a pro coming on. That's actually a really good mindset to have now that I really think about it. But if someone were to walk up to you and say, Julia, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing you'd like to see changed?
Ooh, that is a great question. Um, See, yeah, I think I would like to see, I don't want to like focus on the negative by any means, but I would like to see less like photoshopping on Instagram. I would like to also see like more off season photos. I know that's not like the most popular thing. Everybody loves seeing shreddy photos, shreddy spaghettis all the way. But I would really like to see people building in their off season. And I know that varies. Comfort levels of that vary from athlete to athlete. Some people don't mind showing it. Others are just like, you know what, this is for me. I'm not ready, and that's totally okay. But yeah, and also like the photoshopping, I think is a negative that you can take away from social media, because you see these physiques who are ultimately the top of the in the world, and they feel the need to do that, and it just kind of leaves a bad taste, I think.
Absolutely. I'd say that as well myself, because I see sometimes the photoshops, and sometimes, I mean, people, if you're going to photoshop, don't make it as obvious too. I got to say, for some of these people where
Yeah,
it's like, come on, if you're going to do
yeah.
it, at least do it right. But yeah, and when it
Hmm.
also just comes down to, when I'd love to have you on in a year to just give us an update on what you've been up to. Where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved a year from today?
So a year from today, I would like to obviously have more education as far as prepping competitors. As of right now, I'm just doing lifestyle coaching. And I have a really good, solid client base. I obviously would love to make it larger. Potentially branch out and do, something with somebody, as far as partnership in coaching or bodybuilding. Obviously, the goal is, I always say the goal is the pro card, but it's really not for me. It's the pro physique. Just like I told my coach, I needed a nationals level physique. I need a pro level physique to be able to hang with them if I do get my pro card, because I think that'll ultimately just follow. So that's definitely a goal of mine. I just want people to remember my name and just be inspired for having such a great transformation. I didn't wake up fit. So I hope that people understand that it's doable. I'm just an average girl. And I hope that everybody takes that into account, when they do remember my name in this sport, hopefully. And just continue to be happy with it. Like I said in my previous podcast, not every day is sunshine and butterflies in prep or improvement season. But overall, it's happiness I get from conquering all the goals that I'm making in this sport.
Absolutely. I couldn't have thought of a better way to wrap things up here. And lastly, is there anyone that you'd want to give a shout out to?
My coach, Brenda Garcia, Roofs and Quads, that's her Instagram name. Amy Lee, my posing coach, and number one, my husband. It takes a village. It really does.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And everyone, go and give Julia a follow on her Instagram page. I'll leave a link down below. Buyer beware, you will get inspired to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies. But again, Julia, I cannot thank you enough for coming on here and sharing your story with us. It was an absolute delight to talk to you.
Thank you so much. It was an honor.
Everyone, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.